Thank you for joining us for a virtual fireside chat with Jay Bousada, CEO of Thrillworks, exploring the top pandemic era digital trends in marketing and the future of work for CEOs and business leaders. Jay founded Thrillworks in 1999 to help organizations take full advantage of the potential of digital. He's a born problem solver, beginning his career as an engineer before turning his attention to technology. Now, as CEO, he's driven by a passion to solve problems others may have failed to even see. It's this courage that's at the core of who he is and the driving force behind everything Thrillworks creates. Welcome, Jay.
Hi, thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. So on to some quick housekeeping notes before we get started. Please make sure to ask your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll open up an audience Q&A at the very end of this hour. Now I'd like to introduce our host, Jason Maganoy, Head of Business Development at St. Joseph Media, and also our new Associate Publisher at Canadian Business that just relaunched last week. So thank you both so much for your time today, and take it away, Jason.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Chancel, and welcome, Jay. Very excited to have you here. So we're going to be talking about a lot of different things. We're going to be talking about sort of marketing, and we're going to be talking about digital trends and what we're seeing post-COVID-19. We're also going to be talking about, well, managing culture and how do leaders successfully manage culture in an environment that is largely virtual, digital, et cetera, and what's required of leaders to successfully manage culture in environments like that. But my first question is always the same. It is, how are you and how have you been holding up during the pandemic?
Well, thanks again for having me. It's great to be talking to everybody today. How am I holding up? I feel like I'm one of the most fortunate people, and I say that for several different reasons. One, my family has all been very healthy through COVID. Our team has managed to largely stay healthy, and so that's been a blessing. I mean, certainly living in Canada and having access to vaccines has given us a real advantage here in Canada, individually and as businesses. But I also feel very fortunate because we're a digital shop, and it was really easy for us to convert. Everyone was very comfortable with technology. We all had laptops already. Most of us, spend our day on screens, and as much as we worked individually or together at the office face to face, when we virtualized, we had a little more heads up than most, because I was at an airport one day and got really paranoid at some of the masks that I saw walking around the airport. So I came back and I said, I think we should probably prepare for like working from home for a while. And our tests went off really smoothly. So that was very fortunate, that we had some more runway. But, I have 2 grown children, so I wasn't facing some of the challenges that I think parents of young children have had to deal with. I have a dedicated space in my home for an office. Again, didn't have the challenge of working in public spaces like kitchens and living rooms like some did. So I feel like I got away with a real easy go at this. But we certainly, as a leadership team at Thrillworks, have spent a lot of time and effort paying attention to all the people that didn't have it as lucky as I did.
So my next question is always about, tell us about your career. So you started as an engineer. I love that. Why did you create Thrillworks, and what do you do with your agency?
Sure, thank you. So I started as a structural engineer, which might seem like a real hard pivot when somebody says, like, how'd you go from that? In fact, when I told my mom I was leaving the engineering field and starting Thrillworks, her first question is like, you can go back to engineering when the internet fad is over, right? And I said, yeah, I can go back when the fad's over, Mom. But I was working at a relatively large engineering firm. They ran off mainframes. I was, the most junior engineer in the building, so all the senior guys got to use the mainframe first. And it just seemed odd that I had to wait till the end of the day to run my designs, because we had to run them largely one at a time. So I thought there's got to be a better way, to do our work around here. And so I started looking at technologies that could make that happen. And I knew you can't go to your boss and say, hey, I need you to invest $1 million in replatforming us. But everybody had a web browser on their system. So I thought, what if we use the web technologies to actually rewrite the software with? So I started playing around with that and had a lot of success and really fell in love with it and got pretty nifty at it. And so a few friends who knew people that owned agencies sent those agencies my way, and I started building websites for them at the time. And there weren't a lot of agencies that were born digital at that time, meaning we weren't doing anything traditional. It was all digital. It also brought together a couple passions that I have, which is, amazing creative and, like I say, web technologies. When you combine those things, I mean, amazing things can happen. So I took advantage of that opportunity, and 2 or 3 years after, doing this on the side, I walked in one day and resigned from the engineering firm, which was a real surprise to them. And then I went and told my wife at the time that I did that. And maybe this is one of the reasons that I'm divorced today, because she was 9 months pregnant and said, "What did you just say?" And so here we are, 22 years later, going strong. So, there's a bunch of things, if I might, that we do differently here. When I started Thrillworks, I didn't really intend to start an agency per se. I'd never been inside another agency. I just wanted to solve, creative problems with web technology. So we did a bunch of stuff different. I'm sure a lot of it involved reinventing the wheel, but we encourage, teamwork instead of individualism, right? Where I reward teams for success instead of just, we have team of the month type of thing instead of employee of the month. We were very early to try adopting to agile way of working. Not for the sake of agile, not because it's a buzzword. I just think you get better outcomes. Um, and we don't bill for every second of our time, which is very weird, when you're talking about the agency world, because it's all about the billables. But we think it's very hard to be relationship focused and customer service focused if the customer that you're talking to thinks that, every second they spend talking to you is running up the clock. So we take that pressure off them, and we don't bill for all of our time because we want to form deep relationships so that we can really kind of lead them to great places. So it's a bit of an unusual model that we follow, but we really are trying to reinvent how agencies work from the inside out.
So I love that. So what was that like in like the late 90s, creating an agency that was just doing digital and saying, oh, we're not doing newspaper ads? Not interested. How do people respond to you when you were saying that's our value prop? We're going to be entering this new world because we think the new world is the world.
Well, in some ways, it was a lot easier because nobody knew what they were doing with digital back then. So we got free reign to do almost anything. And because we're so customer centric or customer service focused, it worked out really well for us. Our customers really did turn over a lot of the decision making on how to execute something to us because, again, nobody knew what they were doing back then. It was so early on in digital days. Now, everybody is so comfortable with digital that it becomes a little more difficult because sometimes we find ourselves having to talk people out of an idea because we really pride ourselves, and we have a saying inside the company that we like our customers too much to let them do silly things. And sometimes when they come to us with a silly request, talking them out of it is harder than it was 20 years ago when nobody actually even tried to come up with a solution. They just basically said, hey, we want to explore this new channel, help.
I mean, that actually like sets the scene for my next question, which is this idea of, it seems like, especially during the pandemic, like it's this idea of immersive digital leisure. So like my time spent on my iPhone is like 4 hours and rising. And because of remote working, it feels like I never leave the digital and virtual realm. So how will that affect marketing moving
Um, I think there's going to be, short-term backlash. Let me back up. A couple times, throughout our conversation today, you'll probably hear me say nobody really knows, and that's not a terrible thing. I think the best that we can do is learn quickly and implement those learnings. But that requires putting our ego aside by saying like it's okay if I don't make the right decision. I'm going to make the best decision I can with imperfect information. We're going to see how that works out, and then proceed to make a better decision if we need to. So in this case, how is it going to affect? I think there's going to be a bit of a boomerang effect. People are going to want to get away from screens as much as possible. The more we're allowed to, so the more we can travel, the more we can go out to restaurants and go to entertainment. I think sporting events in Ontario just, allowed us to fill the stadiums now. So there's going to be a bit of a distancing, but I just think the other consequence to having spent that much time on screens, whether it's your handheld or a desktop, a lot of people that weren't comfortable with technology got a lot better at it. And so they can really capitalize on that now. So, somebody who never even thought to check and see if you can order your prescription or refills online can do that now. Somebody who didn't know that you could take a look at the inventory at, say, Lululemon knows that they can do that now. So in the short term, I think people will back away temporarily, but not so much so that, they're putting down their phones and they're running out into the streets and, we'll see you in 4 months. I just think it's going to be like a bit of a bounce. But I think the long-term benefits of like people more comfortable with the digital experience far outweigh any short-term bounce that we'll see. And again, you know, I think people are scared. Marketers might be scared on what this means, but we'll get through it. All we have to keep doing is like, testing and learning, like see how things are progressing, revisit the decisions that we make. One thing that we did at Thrillworks was immediately, after revisiting some of our choices after the pandemic hit, was institute a policy of expiry dates. So, I believe COVID was basically one big expiry date on the old business model. And a lot of companies, including Thrillworks, benefited from revisiting a lot of the choices that we made about how to run the business. And I liked the results so much that, the leadership team and I sat down and said, how do we actually force this kind of thinking on ourselves? So every 3 months, everything at Thrillworks, all our choices expire and we revisit those decisions. And if we like them, we keep going. And if we don't like it, if we've learned something new, we implement that. So reoccurring meetings get canceled, for example, every 3 months. And we can put them back in the books, but only if we believe they're having value or creating value for our customers.
So I love that. So that's a perfect segue into my next question, which is like, you've already exactly showcased some of the things that you're doing, rewarding teams, expiry dates on decisions. Like, how has this sort of move or this pivot into the virtual digital almost exclusively, how does it affect corporate leadership? Because I met my team, like I have a great team and I love my team. We saw each other for the first time in real life in 2 years on Wednesday of last week. And it was like amazingly awkward. It's like, oh, hello, like apparently we are friends. So I guess the question is, what advice do you have for leaders on managing corporate culture now? Any tips you can share?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. It's actually what I speak about the most around the office. And like you, by the way, we had our first open house. We just moved to a new office location that's better suited to this hybrid work environment that we're going with for now. And there were easy 25 to 30 staff members that we hired during the pandemic, and I had never met in person. So it was so wonderful to meet them. And the running joke was like, oh my gosh, like there's a lower half to you, because you just see everybody from the chest up. So it was great to get to meet people. But I think the big push at Thrillworks and the thing that we're really committed to is transparency, almost radical transparency, meaning I think leadership teams got away with making decisions kind of in a vacuum before. Some did a much better job than others at being transparent, but I think that transparency is kind of expected at this point. Flexibility is another thing. I'll give you some examples of what we're doing, but over communicating. I mean, over communicating in a healthy way so that nobody's left wondering where these decisions are coming from. And if you realize that you've made the wrong decision, rethink it, change your mind and be open and honest. Yeah, we thought that was going to work and it wouldn't. The number of times we did that during COVID surpasses the previous 20 years. And we weren't afraid of rethinking our decisions before. But the number of thank yous that we got directly from the staff are saying, thank God you're willing to rethink that choice. Like, I'm not sure if the new choice is better than the old choice, but I like that we work at a place where people don't mind saying, yeah, that was a bad decision. Like, we're going to rethink it. So some of the things that we did to support transparency, right since the company was founded, every Friday from 10 to 10:30, we gather the entire team. It's done virtually now for the most part. And we take them through all the wins of the past week, any lessons that we've learned in the past week. And then, we talk about the upcoming weeks, any big launches that are going to be happening, any software we're going to be deploying. So nobody's left in the dark. We implemented back in the early days of the pandemic when everything was unknown and changing by the minute. I would do a daily video that ranged between, 5 and 10 minutes. I tend to be long-winded, so most of them were 10 minutes long. But we would talk to the staff about, what our understanding of the requirements were and where the business was, be changing to accommodate for what we were learning every minute of the day. We backed those off as time went on from every day to once a week to, once a month. And then we stopped because it wasn't adding value to the team. We implemented an Ask Me Anything. again, all in the spirit of making sure that nobody in the company is left wondering, or nobody's left wondering what role or how to do their job in the company, because it's easy to work as a team, easier to work as a team when you're working face to face. But if people are struggling, we wanted to make sure we knew why they were struggling. Do you not have the tools that you need? Is the platform that we're using getting in the way? And the job is hard enough as it is. We don't need to make it any harder by failing to ask important questions so that we can clear roadblocks for our staff. And so one of the team members realized that some people aren't comfortable speaking up, especially when the CEO is the one answering the questions. So he built, I mean, we own our own dev shop. So he built a tool that would anonymize questions live during our Ask Me Anything. And I would be asked pretty tough questions live in front of the staff. We record it for some of our staff members who can't make it to the meeting, and then we post that for everybody to actually go look at. So you can ask a question even if you don't show up and watch the video after. And so, and we've upped the cadence of our one-on-ones with the team to make sure that we know what our staff's goals are in life. What are their career goals? What are their personal goals? And are they aligned with the company goals? We talk about our goals a lot, but all in the spirit of delivering value to our staff and ultimately to our customers, because we think we can't offer exceptional customer service to our customers if we're not offering exceptional customer service to one another and to our staff. So it's a real important aspect that Thrillworks makes sure that we really kind of up the cadence of communication and listen, like take their feedback, understand what's not working, and then make some new decisions. Recruit them into the decision making. Our new office environment is entirely based on some of the feedback that we got from our old office location. So we got rid of all the things that weren't working and implemented a bunch of new things. So hopefully, we'll see how that goes. But we're really counting on the staff to let us know if it's working for them, and ultimately we'll measure whether it's working by how our customers are responding to it.
I'm stealing all those ideas. They're literally stolen. I love that idea of just like delivering value to your team, and then if you deliver value to your team, it manifests out, and you are going to be able to deliver value to customers.
Yeah.
And that should take me to my next question, which is about. So now it literally is about like this idea of reconnecting. Like I'm reconnecting with my team in real life, customers that have been sort of cocooned and not really speaking in terms of marketing are now just sort of getting back into marketing in a really big way. So, when you're developing a marketing strategy for a client, what are your top 3 evergreen rules that are like always in your playbook?
Most of them haven't changed. They've kind of timelines have gotten shorter on certain things. So getting to know your customer is super duper important because they know what it feels like to be understood by a brand. So if you're not putting that effort in, or if you've gotten away with not really putting a lot of effort there, those days are over. I think speed, to respond to a customer is kind of a really important aspect. Nobody really wants to wait. In the digital world, it's 24/7 business. So, you could get away with maybe having a retail store that had office hours, but now people expect, chat bots on your website to have immediate access to somebody to talk to, and they want to make sure that you understand them, which means you take the time to understand them, which is getting increasingly difficult with some of the privacy rules that are coming in, which I'm sure we'll get to later today. That's making it, really raising the bar. So respecting privacy is going to be a big part of, the second thing that I believe in. If the first is know your audience, it's the second one is build relationships based on trust. And, trust is not a passive thing. You actively have to earn trust from your customers by showing them, how do I collect your information? What do I do with that information? Can I give you access to manage it? Like perhaps, you didn't want to tell me what your gender was until you could say, for example, or your age category, until you knew what we were going to do with it, or you knew it was going to benefit the experience that you had with the brand. Maybe you want to be able to go and add that to your profile or remove that from your profile. So, if you don't understand the customer, if you don't take the time to do that, it's really going to have dire consequences, because more and more brands understand that people expect to be understood at this point. And then, if I was looking for a third, certainly there's an expression that we use that is build, measure, learn. It plays right into the agile methodology that we use in our agile belief system. Whatever it is that you're building, whatever it is that you're creating, whether it's, building a culture or building a solution for a customer, Don't just build it and assume that it's going to work. Measure its success. And what are you measuring? How do you know if what you've measured uh, is a good result or a bad result? Meaning, how do I know what good looks like and how do I know what bad looks like? Measuring for measuring's sake doesn't tell you anything. But then take that measurement and then assess the results, improve your offering, and then do that as often as possible, back to the point of iterating quickly and speed. And I think, those three things. So know your audience, respect them and show them some respect, and then build, measure, learn are the three things that I think, any good brand or marketing strategy should include.
I love that idea though. Customers expect to be understood. And that's
Yeah.
huge. And then this idea of trust being this thing that you continuously have to earn and build, and it grows. And on the flip side of that, how easy it is to lose trust.
Oh my gosh, so much.
It's incredible. And that's actually like my next question, which is basically like you nailed that bit about like, I really want things immediately. Like I bought a Peloton recently, and part of the great brand experience is that I can go on Peloton's site and interact with someone in the chatbot who's a real human being, and I can complain about like, oh man, it's been 9 hours. Where's my Peloton? Like,
Yeah.
what a complaint, right? So I guess the question I have is, it is super noisy out there in terms of the digital social space. Like when you're working and we're trying to grab a ton of attention, like it's really hard to grab attention in an environment like that. So when you're working with your clients, is there like, what's a compelling channel strategy? Are there any favorite tactics you can share? And are there channels that we have to be in right now when it comes to marketing post-COVID?
Yes, I'll get back to the channels. I'll say, and I'm totally stealing this from, Tony Hsieh. Uh, there are far too many brands, in my opinion, that go out of their way to minimize interaction, meaning, they try to automate the heck out of everything because they think that interacting with their customer isn't a good thing for some reason. And, one thing that he often talked about was, he put the Zappos phone number front and center on their website because there's no more relationship building opportunity that's better than getting on a phone call. It's one-on-one, it's personal, you can respond in real time. And I think too many brands try to hide their phone number and throw up, chat bots, or maybe hope that their website does all the talking for them, or their social campaigns will do all the talking for them. I think quite the opposite. If there's something that I've learned, from the 22 years that we've been doing this, we try to talk to our customers a lot about how important it is to build those trusting relationships, and those are built, in a very hands-on way. Certainly, there's a lot of channels, that you can demonstrate that you are making good use of that relationship with. So when you're running social campaigns, if I've identified a preference for something, please don't show me things that I've actually not shown any preference for. Like, it begs the question, why did I bother telling you anything about myself if you're not going to use it? I think a lot of companies have taken advantage of the quick onboarding that you can have to getting in front of the right eyeballs by using services like, some of Google's personalization tools or Facebook personalization tools. But if you're not building your own repository of customer knowledge and treating that with respect, then you're just asking for trouble. And we see it coming already with the iOS 14.5 and the iOS 15 updates, and with, Chrome having to introduce some, or Google trying to introduce some new privacy next year. If you don't own your customer data, and if it's not well groomed, well organized, and, used to the customer advantage, it doesn't matter what channel you're doing business in. Certainly, I think, to answer the question directly, you need a good website. You need a good active social presence. And if you're not doing those things, intelligent email marketing, as much as email might seem archaic, when I say intelligent, again, if I show a preference, like, please send me stuff that I prefer to see. Don't send me things that I've, not shown any preference for. That just sends your customers running in the opposite direction because it's an insult, right?
I mean, everything that you're saying, this idea of basically marketing strategy being a data strategy, because data is really important, it's king. But my question is, like, are we misreading data? Because like there's just so many data points now. It's like sometimes I'll like opt out of something and then I'll be outraged that I don't get the email anymore.
Yeah.
It's just like, but I'm the one who opted out. So I guess the question is, when it comes to sort of looking at data and having such a flood of so much data points, how do you make good decisions with that much data? And how important is this data in making really good marketing?
That's a great question. Such a great question. There's so much talk about, machine learning or ML and artificial intelligence AI. So we just talk about ML mostly because very few customers are going to develop their own AI engine, right? We're using some of the ones that are already out there, like Google's and Amazon's. And it's so alluring to just, jump into, the data conversation or start kind of mining for data. But I think really effective brands will take a step back and they realize like they need to understand what their customers' purpose for interacting with them are. So before you start running to the data, ask yourself, are we really clear on, why customers love us, what they're doing, why do they pick our brand? Because I mean, there was a scary stat, and I don't want to quote the specifics, but it was well over 40 or 50% that said they're willing to switch brands post, pandemic because, they've experienced something other than the brand that they were familiar with, because maybe they were experienced to or exposed to a wider range of brands now that they're online. If I just count on going to my retail store, I might see the brands that they carry. But if you don't understand why your customer is here, like why did they pick your brand? What are they getting from it? What benefit or value does it add? If you don't understand their purpose, then yes, you will grossly misuse the data, because I mean, there's no shortage of data that's out there. And you could start playing with data and be led in all kinds of like erroneous directions. And building something just because it's possible or just because you have access to the data doesn't make it work. I think we've all seen, Google Glass was a great idea in theory, except it didn't have a purpose. Nobody wanted it. And, there was a bit of a derogatory term if you were caught wearing those glasses, right? I think they called them glass holes. So nobody wants to do that with data and an offering anymore. So understand why customers are here, I think is how you avoid getting yourself into a predicament that is avoidable. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, understanding their purpose and then making clear what your purpose for your brand is as well. And then, again, your staff, I think, also benefit from this. I know that there's plenty of conversations going on right now in the industry, so we don't have to get into it here, but about this, the Great Resignation. A lot of people will move, away from, the company that they're with if they don't have a clear understanding of what that business's purpose is, and if it doesn't align with their own. So, if there was a buzzword right now or something that's near and dear to my heart, understanding our customer's purpose, our staff's purpose, and our own purpose, and making all those things super clear is really, really important.
And you just really bridge into just a really good point, which is basically there's all these data points that happen when you're just surfing the web, but then it's almost like, what are people's values? What do they believe in? And then it's a combination of all of these different psychographic profile, affinity, values, data point. If you just looked at my data point, like in my purchasing transactions, I just go to Starbucks all the time.
Right.
you glean that on Jay. Apparently he likes lattes. But my next question is literally about sort of, because you touched upon this idea of sort of people kind of wanting to take a break from sort of the virtual digital space and sort of pivoting away from it temporarily. But one of the things that we've been noticing as a mega trend is that everyone is just flying into the virtual space. Like Travis Scott had a concert in Fortnite. Balenciaga's fashion show was completely in virtual reality. I'm not even here. Like this, I'm a bot. This is like, I'm in an aerobics class right now. This is my AR bot just chatting with you right now. I guess my question then is, the digital world is getting really freaking cool, and it's just going to get better as computing gets better, as augmented reality gets better, as virtual reality gets better. The big next play is like the Oculus Rift, all these great things. How will the real world compete? And do you feel that experiential marketing can make a comeback in an environment?
Sorry, let me just turn this off here. I don't know. Sorry about that, guys. I think it's going to be both, not either or. I think, again, people are craving human interaction. Again, they're going to have different expectations from the human interactions that they have. They want them enhanced with like a digital experience, meaning, if you use your Starbucks example, I want to be able to order ahead of time and then pop in. Or maybe if I like chatting it up with the baristas or like sitting in there, I want to be able to experience that as well without having to rush the experience. But whatever experience I choose, I want to be able to have a good version of that experience, right? The the benefit of getting away, or the luxury of getting away with fragmented channel experiences, is done. I think at this point, we have a little bit of runway left as marketers to help, create smoother experiences for our customers, but, they don't need to see the backstage of our businesses, or our customers' businesses. What they want is a seamless experience from the beginning of the journey to the end of the journey, regardless of where that journey begins, regardless of the channel that it begins in. So I think, people are going to be really excited to have human interactions again, but they better be enhanced by the digital aspect. And then, vice versa, like, why bother having a human interaction if I can do it all digitally? There better be some extra value created when you do have those human interactions.
And I think I love that idea of just making sure that no matter where someone starts any customer journey, that it's as valuable as possible by the time they get to the end. And I was thinking about this, like the customer journey, when I bought my Peloton, the thing that really converted me was my chatbot or my real person interaction on the site. And the customer journey to get a Peloton was a lot shorter because of that than it was for me to buy like natural toothpaste. That was a very long journey. They had to retarget me for maybe a year where I decided to go, you know what, I'm going to give something other than fluoride a chance. But it's so true. Like every step of the way, you want that. If there's like 20 different things that happen on a journey, if all 20 are super valuable, it doesn't matter where you are in the customer journey. You're just building all that brand trust every step of the way, which is phenomenal. Yeah. And that takes me to my next question, which is there anything out there that's inspiring you right now as a marketer?
Lots. I'll try to keep it short because I know that I tend to be long-winded. Certainly the pandemic brought a lot of heartache and devastation, both to businesses and individuals. I also think, the pandemic brought a bit of an awakening to businesses. I think too many businesses, and I dare say even Thrillworks to a small degree, fell asleep at the wheel. We just kept doing what we were doing because it worked yesterday. Why wouldn't it work tomorrow? And it was a real awakening moment. And so, I like the idea that we all had an opportunity or a need to revisit how we were doing what we were doing with our customers. And so, I really like that awakening moment back to the idea of expiry dates. So that's really something that I hope that businesses don't soon forget. Like, God forbid we have another pandemic of any sorts anytime soon. But I don't think we need a pandemic in order to make sure that we don't fall asleep at the wheel again in our businesses, right? Our customers deserve better and expect better. I think the changes that we see coming in privacy are equally exciting. I like a good constraint. I like when, what the approach that I like it when the approach that we've been using has a curveball thrown at it. It goes back to the founding principles of Thrillworks and, trying to solve problems that other people kind of have just accepted. I think it's a good thing. I think if we're going to spend this much time online, privacy ought to be taken seriously. It should be the center of the conversation, and it should force some of the changes that we're going to be seeing coming, including making sure that you know how to build your own customer data and manage it effectively to their benefit. So and then finally, I think there's going to be some gains on the accessibility front now that, everything seemed to go touchless overnight. It's really forced the idea of how do we actually, keep some momentum going on the accessibility front. And so, on and on, there's plenty of benefits that I think have come as a result of what we've seen. Oh, you're on mute again.
We needed a moment like that. Irene, we have to edit that out. That's good. We're on a roll right now. But my question then is key marketing trends. So, it's 2022, hopefully post-pandemic, new government, rebuilding Canada. That's the whole goal in the new year. What are the trends that we need to know about in terms of marketing?
Well, hyper-personalization, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about that. It's one thing to personalize. It's another thing to personalize in context. So it's not enough to just know that, what demographic I fall into or, what shirts I like from Lululemon. When I walk into a Lulu or a retail store of any sort, they need to be able to say, I know what you just bought and I know this would complement it well, and make me that offer in real time, assuming I gave you permission to do that. So hyper-personalization is going to take many different forms for many different businesses. I think we have to get back to, respecting the customer enough to give them an exceptional customer service experience. It just doesn't happen often enough. And if you doubt that, stop for a second and ask yourself when the last time was you were blown away by the service that you got somewhere. I'm sure that you're not going to think of 10 examples if you can think of two. And I think something that seems kind of like a lateral answer to the question, I think marketers need to really start, helping the brands that they oversee, by starting a conversation about, the global supply chain issues that we're going to be having. Because right now we talked about the speed that customers want their products in or their services in. That's not going to happen with the shortage that we have right now. Shipping containers have gone up 1,000-fold. There's delays everywhere with getting products. You got to order a car 6 months ahead of time if you're not buying the one that's sitting on the lot. So I think it's a brand's job to help set expectations, with their customers, and supply chain is a real looming threat to a lot of brands because you're not going to be able to service your customers as quickly as they would like. And how do you manage those expectations?
Wow, that supply chain question is also fascinating because it is so true. And it's funny because I keep bringing up my Peloton. Clearly, I'm obsessed with it, but they're great at marketing. And part of the marketing experience was the fact that they managed my expectations on the fact they don't have that many. It's going to take a while for me to get it. So when I made my purchase, it's like, hey, by the way, it's going to be 9 weeks. Are you cool with that? Don't worry. We're going to give you a bunch of value over the course of these 9 weeks. And you get it. And I thought that was like, and I'd never experienced that before. And I wasn't upset. Like there was that was a good tactic to just keep me in that sort of ecosystem with them.
I love it. And that's a great example. I don't own a Peloton, but I've heard that same story over and over, right? Where there's lots that you can do in those 9 weeks once somebody is committed to buying that product, right? Like educate them a little bit on how to use the product so they don't start that journey when they get there. Make sure that, you send them a countdown email on like how many more days they might have before their particular Peloton arrives to build some anticipation, right? Like there's many things that you can do on that front. You don't just have to say, thanks for the order. We'll see you in 9 weeks.
Yes.
Right?
And that idea of value, like you're going right back to that core element of just making sure that every interaction that you have with your customer is super valuable. And it's like that, man, like the trust that you're able to build with someone is really, really remarkable. And
agreed.
So we're going to move it now into questions from the audience. And we have a question here, which is, what are your thoughts on the Great Resignation? And what can organizations do to retain talent aside from culture, compensation, and benefit packages that include flex work?
So one of the things that we do, because I believe that it is foundational, is understand like everybody has a goal in life. They have career goals, they have personal goals. If you don't understand what your staff's personal goals are, there's no way you're retaining them. Because if you're not helping them get to their goals while they're helping the business get to its goals, good luck. You're nothing more than a paycheck. And staff, like world-class staff, want much more than that. They don't need to be mandated back into the office. Yes, I mean, there are some businesses that require in person, but listen to what the staff needs and like listen. It's super hard. Somebody said you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them accordingly. Listen to your staff, see what they need and help them reach their goals. I think that will make a really big difference in retaining the staff that is looking elsewhere right now.
So another question we have from the audience is, which brands came out of the pandemic stronger? And what did these companies do that with?
Coming out of the pandemic, I think, is an 18-month journey. I know that we've been in it for almost 2 years. I think there's a big settling in phase, right? We never flew the same after 9/11. I think coming out of the pandemic is like something that's still happening. Brands that have come out stronger. I mean, the easy answer would be some of the subscription services that were out there came out stronger. I think those ones will see a bit of a dip as we come out. So something like a Netflix is certainly, now has a lot of competition where they didn't before because the model has been proven so successfully, especially during the pandemic. It's a good question. I think experience-based brands are going to have perhaps like Arc'teryx, where they encourage you, to get outside and engage with their product in new and creative ways. And they really have a customer-centric focus. Would be an example of a brand that's offering an experience, not just a product. And those are the ones that I think have come out stronger.
This is another great question. You had touched upon the fact that we have become more digitally literate as a consumer base. How else have we changed as we're emerging from the pandemic as consumers?
I think, much like the last answer, we are changing. I think, people, we all think that we're eager to get back to the way it was because that was familiar. But I think if we were given the way that it was, we wouldn't necessarily be excited about it. Meaning, if we all went back to work and we all had the commute and we didn't have any flexibility, I think certainly it's given a voice to a lot of people who, in businesses probably wouldn't have had much of a voice, because the old business models that we had was the top will tell you what to do and that will just rain down on the rest of the organization, or a brand will make a decision on what it thinks you want next, and your voice will carry some weight, but we've got a roadmap and we're going to follow that unless but I think giving a voice to a lot of people has definitely been one of the awakenings that I believe I've seen as a result of coming through a pandemic like this. And I think we're going to see like constant change between now and say the end of next year, where people are going to start finally settling in, but we haven't even begun to see a settling in phase yet. We're just at the beginning of the exit. We're not at the end of the exit of this pandemic.
Wow, that's really true. Like, it is going to be a long exit. That's a great way to position it. And also, I love that idea of like, it is really, really true in the sense that I feel like I do have a lot of influence on a brand now. It could be because of the fact that it's the hyper personalization. I feel like I'm more connected to the brand, but it does feel like consumers do have influence over brands and what they're doing more so now than ever. We have a question here, which is, you spoke very fondly of the beginnings and being internet only and having freedom. Fast forward 20 years, where now it's not the Wild West anymore, the internet anymore. Now that everything relies so much on frameworks, design patterns, metrics, data gathering, and technology stacks that are heavily connected, do you find that the fun has been lost in the simplicity of creation?
Awesome question. One of our founding principles is working with challenger mindset clients. So not clients who say they want big ideas, clients who have, proven evidence that they want big ideas, because those clients really allow us to get them outside of their comfort zone. Sometimes it's, small tests that we get to run or small experiments that we get to run, but they're the ones that are really going to capitalize on all the tech and that was just mentioned in that question. Like, once you have access to all this data and you have a customer willing to do something creative or different, to add extra value to its customers, you can't lose. That is exactly, and because we are privately held, we get to choose our clients and be very specific who we work with. And we only pick challenger mindset clients to work with, which is great because we always get to do really fun things and we get to challenge them and they love it, right? They don't see us as being obtuse or not listening. They really, come to Thrillworks because they appreciate the challenge that we bring to them.
Mm. And then we have a comment, actually. It's from Julie. Not to make you nervous, Jay, but we have an EO group here at Parcel having lunch.
Did you say there's an EO group that's having lunch watching this right now?
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of friends of mine that are in EO that were asking for the link, and I was like, I'll share the link, but don't ask me any hard questions.
This actually, this has been a great conversation, and it actually takes me to the final question, which is, what is next for you, and what is next for Thrillworks?
Well, let me say before we end up wrapping, I've really appreciated the time to talk about some of the things that we're doing at Thrillworks, some of the thoughts that we have on, where our heads should be at, in the brand and marketing space. So thank you for all the great questions. Thank you, Jason, Canadian Business and Toronto Life. What's next for us? We're going to continue, hunting for, challenger mindset clients and world-class, team members that we can bring in. We have lots of solutions that we still want to implement for some of our customers that are going to require, hard work and big thinking. We plan on expanding outside of Canada this coming in the next 12 months. And we are going to be releasing some of our own product. We built a product during the pandemic because I was waiting in line one day and called my CTO and said, "Don't you find it's weird that we have to wait in line? We have everyone from strategy through creative, through copywriting, through dev. Why don't we build a solution to this?" So we did. We built a solution to like waiting in line. So we're going to be releasing products of our own too. But certainly, the thing that we work on every day, top of mind, is like, how do we make sure that we're doing the best job that we can for our staff and for our customers? Because we're all about exceptional customer service and world-class work. And so that's a battle that's never won. We got a lot of work to do to keep that going at Thrillworks.
Amazing. Well, Jay, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Thank you everyone for joining us today. This was a really phenomenal conversation. I learned a ton, and I know that I learned a ton because I stole a bunch of it. I'm just saying that now. It's
You're welcome.
really, really good advice on the culture side, on the client side. Really, really appreciate it. But everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We have some great experiences coming up, more great fireside chats over the course of October. We also have a huge Innovator Summit coming up in November. You're going to be hearing more about that very soon. But again, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, please stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. But bye for now.